I held Victoria for a long time, the full weight of everything Chet had told me sinking in as much as it could. I didn't think he was crazy. I thought he was prematurely aged and probably suffered some brain damage from alcohol abuse. The shakes, his skin tone, I sort of recognized the signs from family members who had been lost in that spiral. But I didn't think he was crazy. I mean, parts of it even made some sense of things I had been struggling with, but I don't know. I don't know how to explain the feeling if you haven't had it before yourself. A moment in which you realize that there are incomprehensible, unknown things that have been existing alongside everything that you knew to be true. That's not to say I believed everything he told me. But there was a totality to the series of events he'd presented that maybe I would have been more skeptical of had Margaret not turned up when she did. Victoria looked as though she hadn't slept in days. She had a big reddish bruise on her cheek, and when I was as certain as I could be that her pupils weren't dilated, that she wasn't suffering some sort of obvious head trauma or something, I tucked her in, watched her fall asleep. Then I locked up the house and sat downstairs watching out the windows until the sun rose. A little after 7 in the morning, I drove to a drugstore where I bought peroxide, bandages, gauze, Tylenol, antiseptic cream. The woman at the counter gave me a funny look as I checked out. "Someone in a hunting accident or something?" she said, more like a statement than a question. A decorative candle display behind her flickered and fluttered, creating the illusion of dripping wax on a mirror-like backdrop, advertising the scent of peace and tranquility for your home. I resisted the urge to tell her to mind her own damn business, and I was back at the house in just a few minutes. I got Vicky's shirt off. It was ruined with bloodstains. And I dressed and covered her wound after taking a picture of it. Chet said to document, so I was going to document. She was a little out of it, as though coming out of a drugged sleep, and I had her take some Tylenol, made a pot of coffee, and when I returned with 2 steaming cups, she was sitting up in bed, awake, staring blankly around the room as though she had no idea where she was. When she saw me, the hint of a smile hit her lips and her eyes got misty. "Paul," she said, "what's happening?" "I don't know," I said, handing her a cup, "but we're going to figure it out, okay?" She grabbed my hand and squeezed my fingers, trembling, just staring at the bedspread. "I need you to tell me everything you remember, Vicky. How did you get here?" "It was Van." She took a deep breath and exhaled with a shudder. "I was coming here just to check on the place, like I told you I would. And when I got here, he was outside. He said he needed to talk. He could already tell that I was coming in. I couldn't really fake that. And he said, 'So you know where Tanner is?' I said I didn't. I told him to leave, but he pushed his way in. Then asked me for some water. He looked ragged. Downed 2 glasses and then said it again. 'You found Tanner, haven't you?' 'Why did he think that?' I asked. 'I have no idea, and I told him so,' she said, reaching back to touch her wound, fingers barely grazing the skin before she winced and drew away. 'How bad is it?' 'It's not great, but I think outside of a pretty wild scar, it'll be okay,' I said. He acted like he didn't believe me," she continued. "He started getting agitated, telling me how he should have done more for Tanner, that if he'd just been paying attention, maybe things would have been different. I asked him what he meant. What would have been different? He said if they'd just done what they needed to do, if they'd just taken her like they were supposed to, and he started crying. I asked him who he was talking about, trying to calm him down, if who had taken her, and he did calm down a little bit. Then he said, 'I'm damned, Victoria, but I don't care. I'm damned already. I can't let them do it. Margaret is such a nice girl, I can't let them do it. She's coming home.' At the risk of sounding like a lunatic, I said, Tanner was going to be killed by a cult. And she got away from them, I think, in part because of my dad hitting her with his car." "So she is alive?" Vicky said. "I don't know. I admitted. But she was supposed to die, at least, with them. For them. They were going to do it. And I don't think they did. And I'm guessing the same thing was supposed to happen to Margaret. Did Van have Margaret all this time? He didn't say, she said. I asked him how he knew she was coming home, and he said, because I told her how. But I can't do it alone. And he hit me, all of a sudden, hard. I fell, and before I could do anything, he was on top of me in the kitchen. She started to cry, and I let her. Finally, she composed herself a little, drank some coffee, and shook her head. He was hyperventilating, freaking out, and he said, Paul will know what to do. I'm sorry. I know how it works now. I got a hold of his shirt and tried to pull him off of me, and then I felt him cutting me. I screamed until I almost couldn't breathe, and he kept trying to put a hand over my mouth. Then he got up and just ran out. Jesus Christ, I muttered. How long ago was this? I don't know, she said, sounding woozy. In my head, it feels like a long time ago. Then she leaned over the side of the bed and threw up all over the floor, trying to stand up. Here, wait, I said, helping her out of bed and downstairs on wobbly legs. I got her to the couch, helped her get comfortable, went upstairs and cleaned the mess on the floor, then got her some water from the kitchen. She drank a little, set it down, looked like she might throw up again. Van was arrested, Vicky, I said. A neighbor saw him burying Margaret's clothes in his yard. The police raided his house. They questioned me. It's a mess. Oh my God, she sighed weakly. Do they know if was he Margaret? She shook her head. They questioned you? Why? New in town, asking a lot of questions right around the time she goes missing. You know, I don't think your buddy Aaron likes me too much, we can say that. Damn it, she said, and I could tell there was an undercurrent to her words. I'm sorry. No, don't be, I replied. Like it or not, it makes sense. I tried to put it all together. Van had been caught burying Margaret's clothes in his yard 2 nights ago, which meant he'd been free to go about his business until then. If he'd attacked Vicky and gone home, then she'd been here for 2 nights, alone, disoriented. Which also meant that the whole time I'd been downstairs talking to Dr. Gordon, drinking coffee, sleeping on the couch since my return to Chancellor, she'd been here, upstairs, lying there with a pillowcase over her head, waiting to be discovered. The thought gave me chills, made me sick. I felt a kind of rage in my chest I hadn't felt since Alicia and Patty had gone, since I started spending so many nights drunk or hungover trying to make sense of anything. My dad had called me one night not long after, and I'd hung up on him as he tried to offer platitudes about the situation, which, in retrospect, made me feel like I was going to throw up. Tanner was marked, I said, trying to sort it out loud, with the same symbol. And it was an indication, I think, that she was to be sacrificed by this cult, this thing called the Black Lucia. It's some sort of a sign that identifies you. But Tanner got away from them, right? She said. And it sounds like maybe Van got Margaret away from them too? Yeah, but I think you're supposed to take her place. I think that's why he cut you, I replied. But I'm not going to let that happen, Vicky. Do you hear me? I knelt down in front of her, eased her head up to look at me. Okay? I'm not going to let that happen. How? She said. I don't know yet, I said. She sipped her water in silence. I sat back in a chair, rubbed my eyes, tried to think. Van attacks Vicky, says he's bringing Margaret home, then tells the police that he'd, quote, done what they asked as he buried Margaret's clothes. Add to that the fact that he seemed to think we knew how to find Tanner, but how? How would we do that? And why would he think we could? Having talked to Chet, I guessed I knew the answer. Bell ringer. Had Bellringer given Van some sort of information about Margaret? Did he tell Van to go after Vicky? I didn't totally track. According to Chet, Bellringer seemed more like a conduit of sorts, just info dumping whatever came into his head. Some good stuff, some bad stuff, but if the story was to be believed, many were the times that unnatural things followed his visits and the things he told people. But who was to say he only told the truth? I started to tell Vicky everything Chet had told me about the Hannes family, Bellringer, the Black Lucia, all of it. But right then my phone rang. It was Hugh. "Hey, kid," he said. He still called me kid sometimes, even though I was in my 4th decade. When I was an actual kid, it annoyed me, but now it was kind of endearing. "Got any good news for me?" I said no, that I hadn't been able to find my dad, and he sighed, said to keep at it, talked a little bit about having seen some of their former co-workers at a bar the previous week. He was bored and lonely, I could tell that. While his timing wasn't great, I didn't feel good blowing him off either. He asked when we were going fishing. I told him soon. And he started telling me about shows he'd been watching on TV. One in particular about aliens, some nonsense on the Discovery Channel or something. "Your dad believes in all that stuff," he snickered. "I was talking to him like he was here while I watched it. I guess that's pretty weird, huh?" I had the vague sense that he might already be a little tipsy even this early in the day. Then he apologized. "For what?" I said. "For not being able to help," he said, and he sounded a little weepy through the mild slurs. "I just wish I had more for you from that thing that happened with your dad." "It's okay," I said. I'm figuring it all out as much as I can. "I've been racking my brain since we talked, trying to remember anything else at all," he said, "but there just isn't anything, you know? Middle of the damn night, hungover, radio all fucked up, you know? Wait, what about the radio?" I cut in. "The car radio," he said. Something was wrong with it that night, right before the accident. Everything went to static. Weird talking, like we were getting interference from the phone company or something. A good 10, 20 miles. "Loops of sounds?" I said. "A girl talking?" "I don't know, I guess," he replied. "Sucked because we didn't even have music. I guess we were a little punchy." He laughed, but it came out like a grunt. I'm a little that way myself right now, I suppose. We wound the conversation down, and I promised to call him soon. Vicky sat back against the couch, wincing every minute or so at the pain in her shoulder. "God, I'm going to need to get this stitched up," she said. "Jesus, yeah, God, I'm sorry." I said, I'll take you to the hospital." "No," she replied. I don't think we should go to the hospital yet. Van's in custody, that's great, but it could lead to more questions than answers at this point." "Does it matter now that Margaret's been found?" I said. "Look, Vicky, Van clearly took her. I mean, I don't know the details, but he kidnaps her, he attacks you. Maybe he's part of this Lucia cult. Who knows who they are? Or maybe he's just nuts," she suggested, and it didn't sound far-fetched to consider. I could see her turning something over. "Hey, did your dad have any maps?" "He made them for a living," I chuckled. "Christ, you saw the basement." No, something specific, something Van might have known about," she replied. "When he ran out, he was saying names, and he said that John told him, 'Richard has the map.' That's what he said. 'Richard has the map.'" "What names?" I said. "He was saying Bethel 77, April 79, over and over under his breath," she replied. "Like when you're trying to remember something." "Who are Bethel and April?" I said. "I don't know, but he was saying Bethel 77. Go there, go there." Bethel. It sounded familiar to me too, and I couldn't quite parse why. I realized I'd left some of my dad's documents in the car, so I dashed outside to retrieve them. It was starting to spit rain again, and the wind blew wickedly, swirling leaves and dust up into little cyclones, and I could hear things under the wind, shuffling noises, like movement. Human or animal, I couldn't say which. All around me. But there was nothing to see. I stuck a chair under the back doorknob again, and we began rifling through the stack of papers, sorting through maps, printouts, photos, the whole works. And there it was. The Mothman book from the Andrea Motel. Bethel was one of the names my dad had written in the back of the book. "Here," I said, so triumphantly that Vicky started. I showed her the scribbled page from the paperback. "And here," she said, pointing at the roundabout. There, amidst the largely unintelligible scribbles, dates, numbers, and names, was Bethel. I hadn't noticed it before, just a B and a bunch of sloppy characters that followed it, but that's what it said. "Okay, so who is it?" I said. "I don't know," she said, reading down the list in the back of the book. "I don't know anyone named Bethel or Horace or Parker or any of these." She closed her eyes, rubbing her temples with her fingertips, and then her eyes popped open again suddenly. "Wait, he isn't talking about Horace, Illinois, is he?" "What are you talking about?" I replied. "Horace, it was a little town just outside of Terre Haute," she said. "I only know that because we had family in Terre Haute, and we used to go there sometimes around the holidays." "What do you mean it was a little town?" I asked. "There's nothing there now," she said simply. "It's a ghost town." "Like, smaller than Chancellor? What?" I said. No, she shot back. "It's a literal ghost town. There's no one there anymore." "Why not?" I replied. "Why does any place become a ghost town?" she said. "But the last time we went through that area was to settle my aunt's estate a few years back. Horace is gone. Just empty buildings and houses. Not a soul living there. No businesses, no services." I thought about this. All the little places I passed between Chicago and Chancellor. All the times I would see some unfamiliar name on a road sign and just think, I wonder what's there. What an idiot, I thought to myself, studying the roundabout with fresh eyes. The names in the book were towns, not people. I punched Bethel into Google Maps to see what came up. It existed in name only. There was no town of Bethel, not anymore. But the former town of Bethel was 77 miles from Chancellor. And on the roundabout next to Bethel, he'd written 4/13/79. April 79. "You feel up to taking a ride?" I asked. We rode mostly in silence, over highways that only spat out another car or two every few miles. It was like driving on the moon. As I drove, Vicky punched dates into her phone, trying to find connective tissue between the towns, the mileage, and other numbers on the roundabout that was unfolded on the dash in front of her. "So what happened in Bethel on April 13th, 1979, I said. "Any guesses?" "Couldn't tell you," she replied, "but probably nothing good." "Hey, read me the town names on that thing," I said. "The ones you can make out." "Okay," she said, squinting. "Man, your dad's handwriting is terrible." "Yeah, tell me about it. It's part of why I couldn't make much sense of that thing," I said. "We know there's Bethel now, and Chancellor is at the center of it." "Evans?" "Yeah, that's on there," she replied as I turned off an even more narrow highway than what we'd been on. The sun was peeking overhead as it neared noon. "Horace, Gurney I know." "Gurney near Chicago?" I replied. "No, Little Gurney, just a few miles out from Chancellor," she said. "Desmond, that's nearby too, but Desmond's not a ghost town. Desmond's a town. "Huh," I said. "I know there's Tracy, Parker City, Archway, Ledford. Any others you can make out?" She said. "Tracy, Parker City, Ledford, yeah. Daggett, Shirley." She tapped away on her phone. "They're all ghost towns, Paul. Every single one of them." She paused. "I don't see an Archway, though." She held the page up in front of her. "Oh, wait. Your dad's chicken scratch strikes again. It's not Archway, it's Halfway." "Holy shit," I said, feeling the hairs on my arm stand up. "My car, that first day we met, remember?" "Meet me halfway," she repeated, nodding. "Well, what if it wasn't Bellringer?" "My dad, you mean?" I replied. Could be either one of them. "Or both of them," she said. "I mean, if your dad was out here with Bellringer all those years ago, Traveling with him. Then where does Bellringer go when he's not in Chancellor? I continued. She didn't have a chance to answer before my Google Maps notification chimed. We had arrived on the outskirts of what had once been Bethel, Illinois. Some light clouds were breaking up here and there, letting slivers of sunlight in to drift across cornfields. Aside from a couple of crumbling barns and a farmhouse so dilapidated that it defied physics, our view of the horizon and countryside was mostly that of a peaceful, barren prairie. We crested as the road peaked and valleyed, coming down alongside a seemingly endless pasture. In just a minute or so, the highway gave way to modest little houses on both sides of the street with an aged speed limit sign reading 20. I dropped my speed back out of instinct, and a little sign pointing south said downtown. Know anything about this place? I said, the car just inching along now as we both studied the houses on both sides. All were quiet. There didn't seem to be a soul around, the yards overgrown to a nearly prehistoric point of no return. No, Vicky murmured. Jesus, it's like everyone just vanished. Ahead of us was a small downtown, 5 or 6 two-story brick buildings, one of which looked like it had been a bar at one time. Another had the sun-bleached logo of a mom-and-pop insurance company outside. A dozen or so parking spots lined the 2-block stretch of storefronts. A gas station at the end of the run was missing its gas pumps, and the Amoco sign still hung out front, so rusted that it was hanging by a single chain, the letters almost completely worn through. I pulled into a spot. So what are we doing? Vicky said. This place means something, I said. Listen, stay here, okay? You don't have to do this. I shouldn't. Stop, she said, cutting me off and opening the door with a sigh. To hell with all this. Whoever these people are, this fucking Lucia thing, I want the chance to spit in their faces. We both clicked our car doors shut, reticent to make any unnecessary noise, though it did feel a bit silly. If there was no one there was no one to care. And if there was someone there, they'd likely already made us. The little row of businesses on either side of the street were dated, and the washed-out ads in the window of a former TV repair shop suggested that Bethel hadn't been much of a place since the late 70s. I pushed the door open on broken hinges, and it drifted to the side, allowing us silent entry. 40-year-old console televisions were lined up along the walls, and on little platforms around the small showroom, everything was covered in a layer of dust an inch thick. I wandered to the back room, the manager's office, I guessed, and found a desk with mildew encroaching across the surface from a crack in the ceiling overhead where years of rainwater had found their way in. The air was probably toxic, I thought. A pen and notepad were on the desk, water damaged, writing illegible. It didn't matter what it said so much as what it represented. People had been going about their business here until suddenly, for whatever reason, they weren't. Paul? Vicky called from the showroom. I joined her in the shop where a big zenith was mounted to a shelf on the wall. The talk of your living room, read the flashy cardboard sign overhead, and on the dusty screen, someone had drawn a symbol of some kind in the grime. It wasn't the same one I'd seen all over Chancellor, the one on Vicky's back, but it was similar. Lines that seemed to form some sort of glyph. A structure of some kind. He's been here, I murmured. Bellringer. Vicky's phone notifications broke the silence, and we both jumped about a foot. Jesus Christ, she muttered. My mom checking in. I was supposed to have dinner with her last night. I guess I ghosted her. We made the rounds of the insurance office where dozens of freshly printed, decades-old mailers were stacked on a secretary's desk, ready for the mailbox. Then to the gas station, which was gutted of everything but limp phone wires sticking out of the wall. From there it was a former tavern, the alcohol having long been looted from behind the cheap wooden bar, stools leaking stuffing or broken off their metal posts entirely. A little feed store where the ground was gritty with the contents of a broken sack of chicken feed, but devoid of anything else. And finally, A little boutique filled with moldy, bug-eaten children's clothes. Well, this is fucking creepy, Vicky muttered as we made our way past the racks and toward the open back door. On the counter was an empty cash register, and next to it a cheap boombox that wasn't as old as everything else, as though someone else had been there at least somewhat recently and left it behind. I tried the knobs, but it was dead. Out the back door was a small rust-covered dumpster, a couple of burn barrels, and a huge pit dug into the ground where clothes and endless amounts of random detritus had been collected and mostly burned. What the hell is all this? I said. We began poking through the mess with fallen branches from one of the nearby yards. Lots of clothes, ratty stuffed animals, broken dishes, even a mangled computer desk, and a Texas Instruments computer from the dawning days of the home office, as well as other more specific items, Precious Moments figurines, some action figures, Christmas decorations, a coin bank from Six Flags Great America shaped like Bugs Bunny. It went on and on. It reminded me of old pictures depicting concentration camps, the piles of discarded items from those who were killed en masse by the Nazis. Hey, Vicky said after a few moments of studying the assemblage of discarded toys. Remember I told you I had Margaret in my class? Yeah, I replied. They had to do a speech for my class, she went on. Just a little introduction thing where they brought an object that meant something to them, and they had to explain why, where it came from, that kind of thing. Okay, I said. Margaret had this little porcelain statue of a figure skater, she said. It was ugly. Honestly, like some weird crap you'd find at a flea market. But her grandmother had given it to her when she was a kid. She'd apparently wanted to be a figure skater when she was really little. A few weeks later, she told me that her mom or her dad, she wasn't sure who, had taken it out of her room because it was gone. And when she asked her mom about it, her mom got really upset, said they didn't do anything with it. So what? I said. Voila, Vicky said, steadying herself at the edge of the divot in the earth, reaching into the pile of trinkets and coming up with a broken piece of poorly painted porcelain. I could make out legs and a single-bladed ice skate. Van wanted us to find this place because it has something to do with the Black Lucia and what he did to you, I said, pointing at her shoulder. Because, by that logic, it has something to do with Tanner, she said. So, what happened here? We continued poking through the pile, looking for anything that would give us any sort of clue as to who had been here, when, but there was nothing specific enough to really give us any answers. God, I remember this, Vicky said, finally, lifting up a ripped t-shirt with a stick. WRZT, radio station outside of Peoria, I think. Classic rock. My dad used to... Vicky continued talking, and I stared at the shirt. Radio station. The boombox, sitting on the counter. It's a homing signal, I said suddenly. What? Vicky replied, dropping the stick on the ground. I took out my phone and found the recording I'd made of the signal coming from Van's Playhouse, from the radio band in Margaret's trailer. It's some kind of beacon. For what? Vicky said. That's the question, I replied. I looked at the time. It was almost 3 p.m. It'd be dusky in a few hours. What's the nearest town to the grocery store or something, I said, frantically punching our location into Google Maps and scrolling. Why? What do you... Vicky chuckled. What the hell are you talking about? Come on, I replied, waving for her to follow me. Let's try to get to Jacksonville and back here before it gets dark. Just outside of Jacksonville, Illinois was a farm supply store, and as I loaded up the trunk with everything I'd bought, Vicky swabbed a thick, alcohol-soaked gauze pad on her shoulder, grimacing as she fixed a large bandage over it. On the way to Jacksonville, I'd suggested doubling back and dropping her off at the hospital in Macomb, but she wasn't having it, determined to see through whatever it was we'd stumbled onto. In a way, I was thankful. If she was with me, then at least she wasn't somewhere where something would happen to her because of me, without me there to at least try and stop it. We crept back into Bethel from the opposite direction, parking the car behind the former gas station where it was largely out of sight. I had an idea, and though I wasn't sure it would work as I hoped, I figured it was worth a shot. Besides, it was right in my wheelhouse. We unloaded the bags of stuff I'd bought at the farm and fleet. A gas generator, extension cords, a pair of binoculars, along with a couple of cases of microphones I had in my trunk from the studio, an iPad, and some portable recording equipment my studio partner and I had been demoing for a new concert venue in Chicago, right up until the day before I met John Bellringer at the bus stop. It seemed like 1,000 years ago. We arranged the microphones in a semicircle around the pit of discarded clothes, toys, and everything else, close to the building, running the recording devices inside the shop and getting the gas generator kicking to power the whole thing. I had a few hours as far as power went, so I hoped we'd get lucky if my suspicions were right that the bizarre radio signal was exactly that. I also hoped, maybe, we'd get some sort of evidence of whatever it was that was going to happen, either on video or in the recording. I didn't even know what I was looking for, but anything would be better than nothing. What do you think? I said. I think it's a good idea, Vicky said slowly, and part of me hopes it doesn't work. I put a piece of discarded wood on one of the burn barrels as a makeshift stand and started the iPad recording video aimed at the pit. Then I tested the recorders, had Vicky talk nonsense into one of the mics to get the levels, and when we were sure everything was working as we'd planned, I cranked up the volume on my phone and set it on the dumpster. As the strange loop I'd recorded from Van's Playhouse began to play, we crept quickly and quietly to one of the abandoned houses in the backyard, where a little sandbox, still peppered with plastic pails and shovels, sat by. We found a little ornamental bench back in the shadows of the house, and when we were certain that we weren't immediately visible from the back of the shop, we sat down. It's so quiet out here, Vicky whispered. I wish... She trailed off. What? I said. I just wish whatever happened here hadn't happened, she said. It's probably a nice little place. Mm-hmm, I replied. All we're missing is a net trap like in Return of the Jedi. How fast do you think we could throw one of those together? Maybe there's one inside, she said, cocking a thumb toward the house behind us. When I didn't respond, she squeezed my arm. Hey, what are you thinking? I tried to relax a little in the chilly evening air. When my dad was a kid, my grandpa used to take him fishing, right? Not far from here, right around Ellisville. They hit the Spoon River at one specific spot all the time. This one time they go out there, they see this fish trap in the water, right in their spot. My grandpa gets pissed, says this is their spot. What jackass would do this? So he decides he'll show them, right? So he takes all the fish from the trap. It's like 24 fish. They come back the next weekend and same deal. Trap full of fish. Grandpa's furious. Steals all the fish again. As it turns out, their special fishing spot was on some farmer's land, and they were actually trespassing the whole time. So this farmer decides to get even. Dad and Grandpa hit the river again a couple weeks after that, and there's the trap. My grandpa's ready to steal the whole works again. They haul that thing out, both of them just about to puke from the smell. This farmer had put a dead hog in the fish trap as a big fuck you to whoever was stealing his fish. Oh my God, Vicky laughed quietly. That is sick. Right? I said. That was the end of the special fishing spot, so it worked. What on earth made you think of that? She said. Oh, I said. I'm just hoping that we're not falling for some sort of bait ourselves. Night fell. We sat in the darkness, listening to the sound of nothing. Under different circumstances, I could have fallen asleep, just taking in the cool, fresh night air and occasional sound of an insect or rabbits rustle through the empty yards. Paul, Vicky hissed, her fingernails suddenly digging into my arm. Beyond the back of the shops, and running parallel to the yards where we sat, there was a big grassy expanse that eventually turned into a small park at the end of the block, where rusty, decrepit playground equipment held court for no one. Emerging from the park were small but distinct shapes hidden in shadow, moving slowly but deliberately toward the back of the clothing store. "Get down," I said. We slipped from the bench, crouching in the tall weeds. I wished for a moment that I had a real gun, feeling the pellet pistol I'd bought at Farm and Fleet press against my waistline. But in the moment, if need be, I knew, or hoped, it could do enough damage to get us out of there. Our breathing shallow, trembling as we tried not to move, we watched as the shadows gradually became 3 children who made their way across the yards toward the sound of the signal. They were dressed normally. A little girl in a Paw Patrol shirt and pink shorts, the 2 older boys wearing polos and jeans, respectively, casually headed in the direction of the shop as though they were just passing through town. "Oh my God," Vicky said. "Paul, we can't let kids get in the middle of this." "Wait," I said, remembering that I was trying to argue with the school teacher. "Vicky, there's no one in this town. We don't know who they..." No, they're kids. They're kids." She shrieked, her voice straining with desperation. She was out of the bushes before I could stop her, running through the yard toward them. And as the trio reached the mound of trash behind the store, I had time to scream her name once before I saw them change. It was as though they'd fallen into each other, and it made me think of when Patty and Alicia would play Ring Around the Rosie, clumsily but safely colliding during the ashes part and collapsing to the ground laughing. Only when these kids fell into each other, something happened. There was a wet, rending sound as I saw something that looked like the jagged surface of a giant crab's leg explode from the space where the kids had stood, slashing at the air in front of it, sending Vicky into the mound of burned effects. I heard her scream, and as I ran toward the thing, I drew my gun and fired. The sound gave the thing pause, and it turned toward me. The bodies of the 3 kids had begun to form something resembling a huge crustacean made of human flesh and tissue. Their limbs rippling and pulsing as a coating of some kind seemed to spill down their arms and legs, disfiguring the skin as sharp, spiny appendages emerged, covering the thing. It was weirdly quiet as its form shifted, and all around us was a whispering sound, not unlike words, but not clearly saying anything I could make out, though I wasn't trying as I tried to run past it toward where Vicky had been whipped into the pile of trash. It was on top of her in an instant, its pointy arms and legs thrashing away at the pit as though it was digging a hole, tearing at her as she screamed. I fired into the thing 6, 7, 8 times as fast as the pellet gun would allow, and at least one of the shots found a home, because it jerked to the side, fell over a little, and came apart. The 3 individual forms once again separated, but trapped somewhere between, as though I'd interrupted this thing's transition into whatever it was becoming. The creatures scattered into the neighborhood on spiny arms and legs that made a whooshing, clattering sound as they did, hissing and chattering, disappearing between the houses. tried to say her name, tried to talk at all, but as I reached the pit and saw the blood, I saw how they'd torn at her. My works choked off along with a sob. I couldn't speak, I couldn't cry. I could only reach down and lift Vicky's limp body from the pit, racing as fast as my legs would take me toward the car, easing her into the front seat. Behind the wheel, I peeled away from the gas station from Bethel onto the highway toward Macomb as fast as I could go. No traffic, brights eating through the black, glancing over at her every few seconds, fighting back screams of rage and terror and anguish at the sight of the ribbon cuts that covered her face, her legs, her arms, her neck, her clothes. We were alone in the world, but for the moon and what little light it cast over the landscape. My headlights, the only purchase we had against the vast nothing. And as I neared a crossroads and increased my speed even more, I saw it. A great black crater eating away the earth in front of us, maybe a quarter mile ahead, as if the world around us were disappearing, like we were driving into a void. The crater was spreading toward us fast, the earth falling away into a bottomless hole. And just as we reached the crossing, the blackness swallowed the path forward, and I jerked the wheel sideways. A spray of gravel pitching the car almost all the way around before we hit the fence post, head on. When I opened my eyes, someone was standing over me, staring down at me. "Hello, Paul," they said, a voice in a featureless face. "Can you hear me?"
You have been listening to Cicatrix, Episode 8, But For the Moon. Cicatrix is a production of Sensory Eclipse Media with funding from the estate of Vincent Galt and has been transcribed and produced by Christopher Bevard. For more information on this and other podcasts from Sensory Eclipse, as well as more information regarding the ongoing mystery of Richard Harmon's disappearance, please visit www.sensoryeclipse.com. Original music and score by the Crone Hex. Check them out at thecronehex.bandcamp.com. Thank you for listening.